turned out to be right. Right, Melanie? She turned out to be right.
Verde.
She's a good look. So, Andrew, what? We love you all. Love you. We're proudly restoring safety for Americans at home, and we are also restoring security for Americans abroad. Our country has never been stronger. My first 10 months, I ended 8 wars, including Cambodia. Isn't it funny? Sick people. Cambodia and Thailand. Pakistan and India would have been a nuclear war. 35 million people said the Prime Minister of Pakistan would have died if it were not for my involvement. Kosovo and Serbia, Israel and Iran, Egypt and Ethiopia, Armenia and Azerbaijan, the Congo and Rwanda, and of course the war in Gaza, which proceeds at a very low level. It's just about there. I want to thank Steve Witkoff and Jared Kushner for your help. Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Jared. People like you. You know, Marco got 100% of the votes when he was in conference. I think our next one was about 54%. Some of the Democrats are now saying, I can't believe we approved that guy. And he said it's an honor that they feel that way, right, Marco? You have done a great job, great Secretary of State. I think he'll go down as the best ever. Under the ceasefire I negotiated, every single hostage, both living and dead, has been returned home. Can you believe that? Nobody thought it was possible. Nobody thought that was possible. Both living and dead, and those parents who had a dead son, their boy, they'd always tell me their boy, they wanted him as much as though he were living. They came back, and when we got all of the living hostages back, and many, many before them, but I always said those last 20 are going to be very tough, but we got many, many more, hundreds. But I said those last 20 are going to be tough. We got them back, but we only got back 14 or 15 of the dead of the 28. And believe it or not, Hamas worked along with Israel, and they dug and they dug and they dug. It's a tough thing to do, going through bodies all over, passing up 100 bodies sometimes for each one that they found. Tough job. And they finally got it back to 27. And then Steve and Jared, they got it back to 28. They found all 28. Nobody thought that was possible, but we did it. And I remember the family of the 28. they were so happy as it's possible to be. They had their boy back. The mother said, "Sir, we have our boy back." What a period of time that was, but we got them all back. So thank you both very much. Take care. And we're working very hard to end the ninth war, the killing and slaughter between Russia and Ukraine, where 25,000 soldiers are dying each and every month. Think of that, 25,000 soldiers are dying a month. A war which would have never happened if I were president. Would have never happened. As president, I will make peace wherever I can, but I will never hesitate to confront threats to America wherever we must. That's why in a breakthrough operation last June, the United States military obliterated Iran's nuclear weapons program with an attack on Iranian soil known as Operation Midnight Hammer. For decades, it had been the policy of the United States never to allow Iran to obtain a nuclear weapon. They seized control of that proud nation 47 years ago. The regime and its murderous proxies have spread nothing but terrorism, death, and hate. They've killed and maimed thousands of American service members and hundreds of thousands and even millions of people with what's called roadside bombs. They were the kings of the roadside bomb. And we took out Soleimani. I did that during my first term. Had a huge impact. He was the father of the roadside bomb. And just over the last couple of months with the protests, they've killed at least, it looks like 32,000 protests. 32,000 protesters in their own country. They shot them and hung them. We stopped them from hanging a lot of them. But this is some terrible people. They've already developed missiles that can threaten Europe and our bases overseas, and they're working to build missiles that will soon reach the United States of America. After Midnight Hammer, they were warned to make no future attempts to rebuild their weapons program, in particular nuclear weapons. Yet they continue, starting it all over. We wiped it out and they want to start all over again. And are at this moment again pursuing their sinister ambitions. We are in negotiations with them. They want to make a deal, but we haven't heard those secret words. We will never have a nuclear weapon. My preference. My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen. We have the most powerful military on earth. I rebuilt the military in my first term. We're going to continue to do so. Also, just approved a $1 trillion budget. We have no choice. We have to be strong because hopefully we will seldom have to use this great power that we built together. It's really called peace through strength, and it's been very, very effective. So thanks to Republican in Congress, we're investing that record number of dollars, have no choice, in the United States Armed Forces. Also creating a lot of jobs, but we're not even doing it for that reason. Because, as I said, we have more jobs, more people working today than ever before in the history of our country. And NATO countries are friends and allies. They are. There are friends and there are allies have just agreed at my very strong request to pay 5% of GDP for military defense rather than the 2%, which they weren't paying. We were paying almost all of them. Now they're paying 5 as opposed to not paying. And getting that 5% was something which everyone said would never be done, could not happen. We got it really easily with one meeting. And big difference between 2% that's not paid. We were paying, afraid of many of them, very few were paid up. Now 5% setting records for recruitment. This is so exciting. And every service member recently received a warrior dividend of $1,776. They put it in my desk. We got the money from tariffs and other things, a lot of money. We have much more money than people understand. Have to rebuild that program a little bit, but it won't take long. But we got the money, and it was $1,775, and they wanted my approval. Number $1,775. I said, wait a minute, for one more dollar, we can have 1776. It's going to. I said, we're going to figure that. I never asked anybody if we could afford it. One more dollar. I said, seven. We love our firemen. We're also. We're also restoring American security and dominance in the Western Hemisphere, acting to secure our national interests and defend our country from violence, drugs, terrorism, and foreign interference for years. Large swaths of territory in our region, including large parts of Mexico, really large parts of Mexico, have been controlled by murderous drug cartels. That's why I designated these cartels as foreign terrorist organizations, and I declared illicit fentanyl as a weapon of mass destruction. Very seriously damaged their fishing industry also. Nobody wants to go fishing anymore. We've also taken down one of the most sinister cartel kingpins of all. You saw that yesterday. In January, and America's armed forces overwhelmed all defenses and utterly defeated an enemy, good fighters, to end the reign of outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro and bring him to face American justice. And this was an absolutely colossal victory for the security of the United States, and it also opens up a bright new beginning for the people of Venezuela. We're working closely with the new president of Venezuela, Delcy Rodriguez, to unleash extraordinary economic gains for both of our countries and to bring new hope to those who have suffered so terribly. They really did suffer. With us tonight is Alejandro Gonzalez. She grew up in a tight-knit Venezuelan family and was especially close to her beloved uncle Enrique. But after Enrique ran for office and opposed Maduro, he was kidnapped by Maduro's security forces and thrown into the regime's really infamous prison in Caracas. Alejandro feared she would never see her uncle again. She feared for her own life also. But since the raid, we have worked with the new leadership, and they have ordered the closure of that vile prison and released hundreds of political prisoners already, with more to come. Alejandro, I'm pleased to inform you that not only has your uncle been released, but he is here tonight. We brought him over to celebrate his freedom with you in person. Enrique, please come down. Thank you, Enrique. Have a good time. Nice to have you back, Enrique. There were many heroes on that January raid to capture Maduro. Really great heroes. It was very dangerous. They knew we were coming. They were all set. But the deeds of one warrior that night will live forever in the eternal chronicles of military valor. Chief Warrant Officer 5, Eric Slover, planned the mission and was the flight lead in the cockpit of the first helicopter. A big, beautiful, powerful helicopter. It was a massive Chinook carrying, as you can imagine, many American warfighters. Wearing the dog tags, his wife Amy had blessed with holy water before he left. She knew it was going to be a rough one. Eric steered the Chinook under the cover of night and descended swiftly upon Maduro's heavily protected military fortress. This was a major military installation, protected by thousands of soldiers and guarded by Russian and Chinese military technology. How did that work out? Not too good. While preparing to land, enemy machine guns fired from every angle, and Eric was hit very badly in the leg and hip, one bullet after another. He absorbed 4 agonizing shots, shredding his leg into numerous pieces. And yet, despite the fact that the use of his legs was vital to successful helicopter flight, legs are the most important part of flying a helicopter. To deliver the many commandos who would capture and detain Maduro was the only thing Eric was thinking about. Then, even as he was gushing blood, which was flowing back down the aisle, the helicopter lands at a steep angle. The machine guns stood right in front of him. They were right in front of him, 2 machine gunners who escaped the wrath of the previous planes. Eric maneuvered his helicopter with all of those lives and souls to face the enemy and let his gunners eliminate the threat. Turned the helicopter around so the gunners could take care of business, saving the lives of his fellow warriors from what could have been a catastrophic crash deep in enemy territory. Only after safely landing the helicopter with all the which was vital to the mission, probably would have happened. Maybe cancel the mission if that didn't happen. Eric told his co-pilot, also wounded, but not as gravely, to take over. I'm about ready to pass out. The success of the entire mission and the lives of his fellow warriors hinge on Eric's ability to take searing pain. It was unbelievable what's happened to his legs. Of the bullets that keep on flying and landing, people knew what was happening. everybody in the back of the helicopter knew because they saw the blood pouring down the aisle. Chief Warrant Officer Slover is still recovering from his serious wounds, but I'm thrilled to say that he is here tonight with his wife Amy, Eric, and Amy. Come on in. So we have a surprise, Eric and Amy. In recognition of Eric's actions above and beyond the call of duty, I would now like to ask General Jonathan Braga to present Chief Warrant Officer Slover with our nation's highest military award, the Congressional Medal of Honor. Well, thank you very much, Eric and Amy. Great to get to know you. We met with them and with a lot of their fellow warriors at Fort Bragg recently. You notice the name Fort Bragg. We have it back. We brought it back. We won the First World War with it, the Second World War with it, and then they decided to change the name. So we changed it back. Everybody wanted to change back too. And 10 of Eric's fellow warriors from that incredible night of victory will also be receiving medals at a private ceremony that will soon be held at the White House. And Eric will do that. Thank you, Eric. It's a big one. Tonight we've celebrated many truly extraordinary American patriots, but there is one last living legend to honor before we go. He is one more heroic American aviator, Navy fighter pilot. Royce Williams served in World War II, Korea, Vietnam, flying more than 220 missions. In the skies over Korea in 1952, Royce was in the dogfight of a lifetime, legendary dogfight, flying through. It was his first aerial combat of the war, and despite being massively outnumbered and outgunned, almost destroyed the others, vanquishing his adversaries while taking 263 bullets to his own plane and being seriously hurt. His story was secret for over 50 years. He didn't even want to tell his wife, but the legend grew and grew. But tonight, at 100 years old, this brave Navy captain is finally getting the recognition he deserves. He was a legend long before this evening. Royce, please stand up, and I will ask the First Lady of the United States to present Captain Royce Williams with his Congressional Medal of Honor. I'm not allowed to give it to myself, and I wouldn't know why I'd be taking it, but if they ever open up that law, I will be there with you someday. But you know, that's our highest honor, Congressional Medal of Honor, and that's a big thing, and it's an honor to be in the same room with you. Thank you both very much, Eric. Thank you. Thank you. 250 years is a long time in the life of a nation, but in another sense, it's really a mere moment in the eye of history. Two of the gentlemen we met in the gallery this evening took their first breaths 1 century ago, 100 years before that, on July 4th, 1826, the author of the Declaration of Independence, brilliant, Thomas Jefferson, drew his last breath. Just a single long human lifespan separates the giants who declared and won our independence from the heroes who stand among us tonight. Everything our nation has done, everything we have achieved, has been the work of those few great lifetimes. In those brief chapters, Americans built this nation from 13 humble colonies into the pinnacle of human civilization and human freedom, the strongest, wealthiest, most powerful, most successful nation in all of history. Americans ventured out across the daunting and dangerous continent. We carved paths through an unforgiving wilderness, settled a boundless frontier, and tamed the beautiful but very, very dangerous Wild West. From empty marshes and wide open plains, we raised up the world's greatest cities. Together, we mastered the world's mightiest industries, shattered history's monstrous tyrannies, and we liberated millions from the chains of fascism, communism, oppression, and terror. Americans lifted humanity into the skies on the wings of aluminum and steel. And then we launched mankind into the stars on rockets powered by sheer American will and unyielding American pride. We wired the globe with our ingenuity. We captivated the planet with American culture. And now we are pioneering the next great American breakthroughs that will change the entire world. All of this and so much more is the enduring legacy, unmatched glory of the hardworking patriots who built and defended this country and who still carry the hopes and freedoms on all of humanity's backs. For years they were forgotten, betrayed, and cast aside. But that great betrayal is over, and they will never be forgotten again. Because when the world needs courage, daring, vision, and inspiration, it is still turning to America. And when God needs a nation to work his miracles, he knows exactly who to ask. There is no challenge Americans cannot overcome, no frontier too vast for us to conquer, no dream too bold for us to chase, no horizon too distant for us to claim. For our destiny is written by the hand of providence, and these first 250 years were just the beginning. From the rugged border towns of Texas to the heartland villages of Michigan, from the sun-kissed shores of Florida to the endless fields of the Dakotas, and from the historic streets of Philadelphia to right here in our nation's capital, Washington, D.C., the golden age of America is upon us. The revolution that began in 1776 has not ended. It still continues because the flame of liberty and independence still burns in the heart of every American patriot. And our future will be bigger, better, brighter, bolder, and more glorious than ever before. Thank you, God bless you, and God bless
The President of the United States, Donald J. Trump, giving the longest State of the Union address on record, clocking in at something like 1 hour 48 minutes, beating his own previous record set last year at what was not officially a State of the Union, was a joint address to Congress, giving a rousing description of the United States of America, even if it isn't the one that most Americans, according to polls, see in terms of the economic prosperity, in addition to some very sharp, very partisan, even nasty attacks on Democrats, and some populist economic proposals. The president taking time to make healthy use of stories both sad and illustrative and inspiring, stories of fellow Americans. We saw not one but two Congressional Medals of Honor awarded, one to a 100-year-old Navy fighter pilot from World War II, Korea, and Vietnam. The other one to Chief Warrant Officer Eric Slover, injured during the Maduro raid just last month. I do not doubt that his supporters will absolutely love his speech, and his critics will find much to hate about it, but there were definitely moments that I think any American would appreciate.
Yeah, and what Americans wanted to hear more than anything else was about the economy. And the president certainly did what we hear a lot on a daily basis about how he thinks it's the greatest economy in the world, and all of the sort of hyperbole that is classic vintage Trump. But he did put in some specifics, as you said, populist economic proposals in there that will please the Republicans who are sitting in that chamber right now, who are all up for re-election and are very worried about that re-election. We talked about things that really are hitting Americans hard. Energy costs. Said that he is going to try to get the AI companies to pay for, and the tech companies to pay for how much energy they are using, which American consumers are now paying for largely. Housing costs, you got a proposal on that. Is that going to make people feel better tomorrow? No. But a lot of the concern that people who are going to go out and vote or not vote this election year is that they don't think that he's paying attention to that. And is this speech going to solve that? No. But at least they all have clips and some talking points that they can go back on the campaign trail and start talking about.
Yeah, and I just want to note there was Thomas Massey standing over as the president was exiting. Of course, the president, Thomas Massey, feuded. He's not happy with him. He wants him to lose his job as a member of Congress. I think what stood out to me as we were watching this is, this is not unfamiliar territory for the president. He has delivered many of these addresses. He's now broken his own records on how long he has spoken. But these moments as he was in there, and in the beginning, obviously getting started, he was largely looking over to the left side of the chamber where a lot of the Republicans were sitting. Then he began looking at the right side as Democrats obviously were not standing for what he believed should be applause lines during his speech. And he was getting increasingly irritated by it. At one point stopping and saying, these people are crazy, I can't believe they're not standing for this. The one thing that I saw them all standing for was when they were talking about insider trading and banning that. He made an offhand joke about Nancy Pelosi. Well, not all of them were standing, but a handful of them were.
Yeah, but that got more applause. Senator Elizabeth Warren was standing, and that obviously stood out to the president himself. But obviously these other moments, the guests that they invite, this happens with every president, as you all know, they bring them for these moments, so they will have these moments that go on. I think to Dana's point, the question is if there's voters at home, how do they feel about this? Does it make them feel better about making their mortgage payments and paying down their credit card bills? That remains to be seen ahead of the midterms, but they certainly had those moments.
Well, and of course, big picture, we have to remember, this is a president who's been under immense pressure, right? His polling, his approval rating is lower than it's ever been. He was speaking to a room full of Republican members of Congress, many of whom stand to lose their seats. The president stands to lose part of the power that he currently has in Washington. And I think the speech reflected the way this president often deploys the strengths that he has. Yes, he spent some time defending his own record. He spent some time blaming his predecessor. He spent some time, at least one of my Republican sources pointed out to me, trying to convince people it wasn't as bad as maybe they feel that it was. But he spent far more time during the speech on offense, right? Ticking through places that are culturally inflammatory in some cases. He put Democrats on the spot repeatedly. He almost goaded Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar at one point into shouting back at him when he asked the crowd to stand and clap if they supported American citizens. That is where this president often tries to project strength, and he did it again tonight.
And for those at home who are wondering what exactly happened when Congressman Al Green, Democrat of Texas, why he was ejected, he was holding a sign saying, quote, "Black people aren't apes," an allusion to the video that President Trump tweeted a few days ago in which President Obama and First Lady Michelle Obama were in fact depicted as apes. Anderson?
Jake, thanks very much here with the panel. John King, what stood out to you?
I think it's important to remember that, sadly, in my view, most Americans live in their silo. And so people watch this from their perspective, choir practice for the most part. President had a lot of challenges coming into this speech. His approval rating overall is down. His approval rating of the economy is down. His approval rating of immigration is down. I mentioned early on one of the big glaring problems for Republicans, because it's the midterm year, is the approval rating among Republicans is down some too, from 90% to 82% in our most recent poll. I would not be surprised at all if he helped himself there. That's not enough. That's not enough. One speech is not going to change anything. But the Republican Party needs its base enthusiastic heading into the midterm election year. And there was a lot in the speech from the president, both from a policy perspective of what he's done and what he's trying to do, and the few skirmishes he had with the Democrats. That if you're trying to get your base to say, okay, I've been sort of pulled back. Washington's too loud. I don't like the fighting. I don't like a lot of Latino Republicans I talked to. I don't like seeing ICE in the streets of America. You might get a little bit of them back in the fight.
And that is what was so important about tonight. He nailed the Republican base, brought them back in the fold with a solid message on the economy, on immigration, on his foreign policy. That is the work he had to do. And that also brings over a lot of independents that are similarly minded to what Republicans believe.
Not sure about that part, but we'll see.
That's actually how the presidential election modeled out, and will be very instructive and important for the midterms. But between now and the midterms, he has to maintain his control of Republicans on the Hill. He did that in spades.
Well, he also
basically kept control of himself, which I think will be a great relief to his strategists and aides there. But the question, I mean, I think he did well from their perspective for the reasons that you say, John, and he used the gallery very skillfully to kind of simulate empathy, which is a thing that he's been lacking, and that's sort of a surrogate for that. The question is, he started off the speech by saying, this is the turnaround for the aged. And as you know, because you're traveling around the country, people don't think the direction is right. And I don't think this cured that. So we'll see. But I don't think a lot of the people who needed to be persuaded probably were watching this speech.
I also just want to quickly point out, in about a minute or so, we're going to be hearing from the Democratic response from Governor Abigail Spanberger of Virginia, newly elected.
Yeah, I mean, I think stylistically, the speech really told us where the president is, which is that the way that he wants to see the country may not be where the country actually is or where the country sees itself, but he utilized almost like these game show type moments to really bring these moments of togetherness that otherwise might not have been there. I actually thought it was very skillfully done. He awarded several medals of honors, Purple Heart. He brought up the natural disaster in Texas. He had to do that because I think the rest of his message, I think, is a hard pill for Americans to swallow. And I think those other moments.
We're going to be hearing now from Governor Abigail Spanberger, the governor of Virginia, for the Democratic response.
Good evening. Good evening and welcome to historic Williamsburg. We are gathered here in the chambers of the House of Burgesses. In 1705, the people of the Virginia colony gathered here to take on the extraordinary task of governing themselves. Before there was a Declaration of Independence, a Constitution, or a Bill of Rights, there were people in this room. The people who served here ultimately dreamed of what a new nation, unlike anything the world had ever seen, could be. The United States was founded on the idea that ordinary people could reject the unacceptable excesses of poor leadership, band together to demand better of their government, and create a nation that would be an example for the world. And this year, as we celebrate 250 years since America declared our independence from tyranny, I can think of no better place to speak to you as we reflect on the current state of our union. Tonight, as we watched we did not hear the truth from our president. So let's speak plainly and honestly. And let me ask you, the American people watching at home, 3 questions. Is the president working to make life more affordable for you and your family? Is the president working to keep Americans safe both at home and abroad? Is the president working for you? As I campaigned for governor last year, I traveled to every corner of Virginia, and I heard the same pressing concern everywhere. Costs are too high in housing, healthcare, energy, and childcare. And I know these same conversations are being had all across this country. Because since this president took office last year, his reckless trade policies have forced American families to pay more than $1,700 each in tariff costs. Small businesses have suffered, farmers have suffered, some losing entire markets. Everyday Americans are paying the price. And even though the Supreme Court struck these tariffs down 4 days ago, has already been done. Meanwhile, the president is planning for new tariffs, another massive tax hike on you and your family. And Republicans in Congress, they remain unwilling to assert their constitutional authority to stop him. They're making your life harder. They're making your life more expensive. They're even making it more difficult to see a doctor. Rural health clinics in Virginia and across the country are already closing their doors thanks to the so-called One Big Beautiful Bill, championed by the president and Republicans in Congress. And tonight, the president celebrated this law, the one threatening rural hospitals, stripping healthcare from millions of Americans and driving up costs in energy and housing, all while cutting food programs for hungry kids. But here in Virginia, I am working with our state legislature to lower costs and make the Commonwealth more affordable. And it's not just me. Democrats across the country are laser focused on affordability in our nation's capital and in state capitals and communities across America. In the most innovative and exceptional nation in the history of the world, Americans deserve to know that their leaders are focused on addressing the problems that keep them up at night. Problems that dictate where you live, whether you can afford to start a business or whether you have to skip a prescription in order to buy groceries. So I'll ask again, is the president working to make life more affordable for you and your family? We all know the answer is no. I grew up in a house of service. My mother was a nurse, and my father was a career law enforcement officer. I began my career as an agent, working money laundering and narcotics cases. I worked side by side with local and state police to keep our community safe and to uphold and enforce the law. Law enforcement officers across the country know that it is a unique responsibility to do the serious work of investigating crimes, comforting victims, and making arrests. It's about building trust, and that requires an abiding sense of duty and commitment to community. And yet, our president has sent poorly trained federal agents into our cities, where they have arrested and detained American citizens and people who aspire to be Americans, and they have done it without a warrant. They have ripped nursing mothers away from their babies. They have sent children, a little boy in a blue bunny hat, children to far-off detention centers, and they have killed American citizens in our streets. And they have done it all with their faces masked from accountability. Every minute spent sowing fear is a minute not spent investigating murders, crimes against children, or the criminals defrauding seniors of that we are safer. Because these agents arrest mothers and detain children? Think about that. Our broken immigration system is something to be fixed, not an excuse for unaccountable agents to terrorize our communities. After working in law enforcement, I continued my career of service as a CIA officer, working undercover to protect the United States and our allies from global threats, terrorism, nuclear weapons, and the aggression of adversarial nations around the globe. But as the president spoke of his perceived successes tonight, he continues to cede economic power and technological strength to Russia, bow down to China, bow down to a Russian dictator, and make plans for war with Iran. Here's the truth. Over the last year, through Doge, mass firings, and the appointment of deeply unserious people to our nation's most serious positions, our president has endangered the long and storied history of the United States of America being a force for good. So I'll ask again, is the president working to keep Americans safe, both at home and abroad? We all know the answer is no. In his speech tonight, the president did what he always does. He lied, he scapegoated, and he distracted. And he offered no real solutions to our nation's pressing challenges, so many of which he is actively making worse. He tries to divide us. He tries to enrage us, to pit us against one another, neighbor against neighbor. And sometimes he succeeds. And so you have to ask, who benefits from his rhetoric, his policies, his actions, the short list of laws he's pushed through this Republican Congress? Somebody must be benefiting. He's enriching himself, his family, his friends. The scale of the corruption is unprecedented. There's the cover-up of the Epstein files, the crypto scams, cozying up to foreign princes for airplanes and billionaires for ballrooms, putting his name and face on buildings all over our nation's capital. This is not what our founders envisioned, not by a long shot. So I'll ask again, is the president working for you? We all know the answer is no. But here's the special thing about America. On our 250th anniversary, we know better than any nation what is possible when ordinary citizens, like those who once dreamed right here in this room, reject the unacceptable and demand more of their government. We see it in the determination of students organizing school walkouts all across the country, whose voices are becoming so powerful that the governor of Texas seeks to silence them. We see it in the bravery of Americans in Minnesota standing up for their communities, from peacefully protesting in sub-zero temperatures to carpooling children to school, so that their immigrant parents are not ripped away from them in the parking lot. As a mother of 3 school-age daughters, I am inspired by their bravery, but I am sickened that it is necessary. And Americans across the country are taking action. They are going to the ballot box to reject this chaos. With their votes, they are writing a new story, a more hopeful story. In November, I won my election by 15 points. And we won 13 new seats in our state legislature. Because voters decided they wanted something different. Our campaign earned votes from Democrats, Republicans, Independents, and everyone in between. Because they knew as citizens they could demand more, that they could vote for what they believe matters, and that they didn't need to be constrained by a party or political affiliation. This is happening across the country. New Jersey elected Mikey Sherrill as governor in a double-digit victory. Democrats flipped state legislative seats in places like Georgia, Iowa, Mississippi, and Texas. The list goes on and on. Ordinary Americans are stepping up to run in the spirit of our forefathers. They are running to demand more and to do more for their neighbors and communities. I know this story well. I first ran for office in 2018 alongside dozens of other Democrats who did the seemingly impossible, flipping 41 seats in Congress. In my case, I was the first Democrat elected in 50 years, swinging our district 17 points. Those who are stepping up now to run will win in November because Americans, you at home, know you can demand more, and that we are working to lower costs. We are working to keep our communities and our country safe, and we are working for you. In his farewell address, George Washington warned us about the possibility of, quote, cunning, ambitious, and unprincipled men rising to power. But he also encouraged us, all Americans, to unite in a common cause, to move this nation forward. That is our charge once more, and that is what we are seeing across the country. It is deeply American and patriotic to do so, and it is how we ensure that the state of our union remains strong, not just this year, but for the next 250 years as well, because we, the people, have the power to make change, the power to stand up for what is right, the power to demand more of our nation. May God bless the Commonwealth of Virginia, and may God bless the United States of America.
Washington, John, I mean, Abigail Spanberger, the governor of Virginia, ran and won really on the issue of affordability.
Huge margin, as she mentioned at the end, and that was those elections when she won, Mikey Sherrill won in New Jersey. That was our first sign of what we have seen consistently since. The Democrats have not only done well, but they have overperformed in just about every election in 2025 and so far in 2026. That's the momentum they hope to carry into this midterm November. That's the momentum the president was trying to stop, or at least slow, in his speech tonight. That's always a thankless task. She did a pretty good job. She has a crowd in the room. I think it was Christy Whitman of New Jersey tried that a few years back, giving a speech with a crowd in the room to give you a little bit more energy. But you're never going to match the power of the president and the Congress and having the big, huge audience. So you do your best you can. So what did she do? Essentially, get back to that affordability message. Essentially say, don't believe what you just heard from the president. Check your electric bill. Check your credit card bill. Then she got essentially, don't trust him, right? Do not trust what he tells you. And then she, I think, quite deliberately brought up the Epstein files and tried to bring up some things the president hasn't said. Essentially, if she held the audience on television, which is another challenge after the president speaks, say, just give me a minute to pick on a few things that why didn't he talk about those things? That's what you always try to do in the rebuttal. Again, it's a pretty thankless task.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that, as John said, she did a pretty good job. I mean, there were no drink breaks or excessive sweating or some of the stuff that makes things kind of comical. None of that. Fine. I think that was
What do you think
that's
about how
helpful.
the president did?
I thought President Trump actually delivered a higher energy speech than I think even his speech last year. He was much more engaged, and I think part of that was because they had planned the speech to be an interactive experience between him and the audience. There were things for him to announce, surprises. There were big moments, emotional moments, and that helps him tremendously. But I also think that the contrast between obviously the Democratic message and the president's message was on display tonight. You have a president who thinks that everything is going well on the economy, but the other part of his message, I think, is highly divisive. It has, you're talking about culture war stuff, trans children, and what he claims to be forced sex changes in schools. He's, villainizing Somali immigrants. The message from the president on the non-economic things was pretty harsh. And I think Abigail Spanberger was trying to make a contrast tonight on those very fronts. She was talking about school children doing walkouts and protests because they don't like the direction that the country is going. Democrats are leaning into that contrast, not just on the economy, but also on some of these more.
Yeah, but these are pretty standard Democratic themes, frankly. There's nothing new on earth there.
We're going to talk more about this. I just want to go to Jake right now. Jake, thank you so much. Well, we have a special guest with us here. I want to bring in Speaker Emerita Nancy Pelosi, Democrat of California, who is leaving Congress at the end of this all. So thank you so much for joining us. You have sat through a great number of State of the Union addresses, some of them behind the president. What was your reaction to what you heard this evening?
Well, first let me say that I think that Governor Spanberger did a remarkable job just insisting on the truth, which is what we have to do when we're dealing with this president. I thought the speech was lazy. It's one thing to acknowledge patriotism and people getting well and everything when you have absolutely nothing to do with their courage or the rest, but you spend an hour and a half doing what is the state of the nation. Okay, so I have a few things to I was going to call my first name, but
Governor Spanberger.
just really hit it out of the park. But here's the thing. He started off with BBB. His big, beautiful bill, which is, of course, disgusting. He talks about protecting Medicare. He took $500 billion out of $500 billion out of Medicare in his BBB, and $1 trillion out of Medicaid, which is health benefits for many seniors in our country. What was sad for me was to see when he talked about how many people he took off of SNAP programs, children and the rest, that the public just stood up and we're not feeding the kids. How about that? That's great. And all of that to give a tax cut to the richest people in America. Food out of the mouths of babies, people off of health, millions of people off of Medicaid, give it to them. Okay, then he goes on to
some foreign policy, after drifting and all the rest, some foreign policy. Did he spend a sentence and a half on Ukraine, where democracy is at stake, where American people want us to be there on the side of democracy?
And it's the 4-year anniversary of the invasion today.
Today is the 4-year anniversary. You think he would have risen to the occasion, but his occasion, as I said in that picture in the cabinet room, when pointing to him that day, I said, "With you, Mr. President, all roads lead to Putin. If I were president, it would never happen. Well, you are president. You can stop it."
Speaker, so much of obviously number one thing that people take away from watching the State of the Union is the president. But people are also watching for the reaction of the opposition party. And your leadership warned the caucus not to have any outbursts, not to take the bait. There was a moment where a couple of members did not, more than one moment, but I wanted to play one of them for you when a couple did not heed that. Just watch.
And enact serious penalties for public officials who block the removal of criminal aliens. In many cases, drug lords, murderers all over our country, they're blocking the removal of these people out of our country, and you should be ashamed of yourself.
That was hardly noticeable in the room. It may have been more noticeable on TV. Hardly noticeable. And then also when he started talking about corruption, the members were saying, more of an outburst than that, actually. I don't think that there was that much, shall we say, departure from what the leader had guided us to do. Don't come if you don't want to come, but if you come, we don't want to give him a moment. And I don't think they gave him.
There was one moment, Madam Speaker, where he called you out specifically around, of course, congressional stock trading. What do you say back to him?
I say back to him, as that's what members said, look at your own self. The inference he wants to draw is there was something wrong with that, which there wasn't. And if there was, people get prosecuted for it. For a long time now, we've been trying to pass this law. It doesn't have, now it has more support than it had before. And
Elizabeth Warren stood up and applauded. Elizabeth Warren stood and applauded tonight when the president talked about it.
Well, we all did. I did too. He said, "Did Nancy stand up?" Yeah, I did too. A lot of people stood up. A lot of Democrats stood up. I think that will pass, depending on what the bill is. I mean, what we had, we thought we could pass. It was actually a tougher bill than Governor Spanberger had put forth. We thought it could pass, but it was clear that it wasn't going to make it to the House and the Senate. But in any event, he gives his shout out. You don't pay any attention to him. What I'm concerned about is our democracy, which he is destroying, even in the 250th year anniversary. But we saved the democracy at the kitchen table to talk about how we help working families with their costs, taking down the cost, not by giving tax breaks to the wealthiest people in the country, by making healthcare more expensive for them. And then he talks about drugs in America. Well, he freed Hernandez, a guy who sent 400 tons of cocaine into the United States and said he was going to jam it up the throats, up the noses of the gringos. He freed him. He had been convicted in a U.S. court. He freed him. It's about follow the money when it comes to it. But let's just be calm. I believe in the goodness of the American people. I think Governor Spanberger's response, I don't know if it's a response, I think it was something more positive than that, really talked about what our responsibilities are. And we believe in the goodness of the American people, that when they are presented with the truth, what the opportunities are, what the difference is, that they will come around to that. And hopefully we can do that in a bipartisan way.
And Speaker Pelosi, I noticed you're wearing something that a lot of your Democratic colleagues are wearing, which is this white button that says release the files.
Yes, release the files.
The president's speech was record long, but it did actually not, he didn't make any mention of Jeffrey Epstein during that speech, despite the fact that there were some survivors of Jeffrey Epstein's in the chamber.
Anywhere.
What did you make of that moment?
Well, it was, again, I don't even know if that was a State of the Nation speech. You know, it's in the Constitution that the president shall send a statement of the state of the nation. It can only be it can be in a manila envelope. It doesn't have to be a speech, but it's become a speech. But he ignored the State of the Nation. And the State of the Nation is about our integrity as well. Freedom of the press. independence of the judiciary, rule of law, all of that separation of power. Forget it with him. And so the fact that he knows this is a vulnerability, and we've had lots of conversations with the survivors and with other people who have been survivors in the community. That's why the American people are so insistent that this thing has continued. But the fact that he didn't mention it shows his vulnerability, his exposure in all of this.
Madam Speaker, before you go, as a member of Congress, I have covered a number of ones that you were the speaker for, and I wanted to show you a couple moments that stick in our minds from your being House Speaker during the State of the Union address. Take a look.
Tonight I have the high privilege and distinct honor of my own as the first president to begin the State of the Union message with these words: Madam Speaker.
So those moments, I mean, that when I think about you presiding as Speaker, those are actually the two moments. That moment of real grace from President Bush, and that, shall we say, tense moment between you and President Trump. And I do think it also shows the degradation of politics in America in a way.
Well, the thing is that I didn't tear up his speech because we didn't shake hands. I tore up his speech because it was a manifesto of lies, as the speech was tonight. So he's consistent with what he's doing. But the speaker did not choose to tear up his speech. Let me just say one more thing, though.
Yeah.
On Iran, because this is very important. We all agree that Iran cannot have a nuclear weapon. President Obama masterfully, with great virtuosity, had a diplomatic solution to how we would have a nuclear agreement with Iran. He turned that around, he rejected that, cast it aside, and now is using threat of military and the rest. It's so ridiculous. It's so inept. It's so below the quality of leadership that our country is used to 250 years. So in any event, thank you for the opportunity.
Oh, it's so great to have you. Please don't be a stranger, but you're still in Congress for another year, so, you know.
Yeah, I'm still here for another
year. CNN.
Lovely to see you all. Freedom of the press, you are the defenders of our democracy. Transparency, accountability, roads all spring from you. So thank you for your leadership.
We're trying.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Madam Speaker. Good to see you. I want to bring in a member of the President's Cabinet now, the Secretary of Transportation, former Wisconsin Republican Congressman Sean Duffy. Secretary Duffy, going into tonight, CNN's most recent poll has the President's approval rating at 36% overall, even lower among independents. I think a record low, career low, 26%. What do you think he did tonight? What do you think he said tonight that might help those numbers improve so that he has more support among the Americans?
Well, I think he highlighted his record, right? So he secured the point about inflation is down. Was record that I think the American people can agree with. But sometimes when you win on things, Jake, as much as the president has won, the American people go, well, what's next? And I thought he did a nice job tonight talking about the Trump healthcare accounts, Trump RX, where you can bring down your medication costs because of most favored nations, where no other country is going to pay less for healthcare than the American people do. And so I think that was a real positive, as well as giving money not to insurance companies, but to the American people. Also leading into the price of homes, where we're not going to have Wall Street firms buy up single-family homes, driving up the cost so Americans can't afford them. All policies I think they care about.
Americans did want to hear from him about the cost of living and the economy. As you noted, he had some proposals, he touted some accomplishments. Some of them weren't quite so true. Here's a bit of what he said.
The Biden administration and its allies in Congress gave us the worst inflation in the history of our country. But in 12 months, my administration has driven core inflation down to the lowest level in more than 5 years. The stock market has set 53 all-time record highs since the election. Think of that. 1 year. Boosting pensions, 401ks, and retirement accounts. The state of our union is strong.
So, just in point of fact, the president didn't inherit the worst inflation in U.S. history from the Biden administration. It was high during the Biden administration, but by the time Trump got it, it was down significantly, about 3%. He continued to call affordability a lie. Americans are still concerned about, I'm coming to you in 1 second, about the cost of living on a daily basis. Yeah. I guess the question is, do you worry at all that President Trump is falling into the same trap on economic messaging as President Biden did in terms of telling people not to believe their lying eyes when Biden was touting Bidenomics?
Yeah, no, I think the results are real for President Trump. So again, you have to remember during the Biden era, those rates were, or inflation was up at north of 9%.
Sure.
President Trump has brought them down near the target of 2%. Right? You had gas prices that were much higher when Joe Biden was in office, as opposed to Donald Trump today has driven the price of energy down. That is money in people's pocket. We all know that. And so I think to lean into those successes, I think the American people would agree with that. And to say that the State of the Union is strong, I think they agree with that as well. So I think you do have to talk about what you've done and why it's positive for the American people. I'll just tell you, Jake, when he looked over the Democrats and said, I mean, you're crazy. I mean, it's one thing. Listen, I've said it there as a member of Congress. When I didn't agree with Barack Obama or Biden, I wouldn't stand up. But presidents say a lot of things that Americans like, that are American issues. And Democrats, in essence, sat down for all of them. You had Congresswoman Tlaib in Omar. They were heckling the president through the whole speech. I'm not sure if you could hear it, but it was incredibly distracting. When someone yelled, "You lie," at Barack, what happens in Congress? You had the former speaker on. And again, where does it start when you have a speaker that stands behind the president and rips up a speech? Where does decorum come back? And I'm looking at Democrats to go, hey, listen, be an American. Applaud great issues the president raises. Just because you don't like him doesn't mean it can't be an American issue that you support.
Just in point of fact, I mean, I understand you're saying that when President Obama said things, you would not sit in protest even when he was bringing up Americans who are heroic, etc. I mean, President Trump did say during his speech about all the Democrats, not just one congresswoman or another, about all of them. He said, quote, "These people are crazy. I'm telling you, they're crazy." I mean, but that's not something we ever heard from Obama or Biden from that stage.
Yeah, listen, we've never had a speaker rip up a speech either. But when you're saying issues like we're talking about trucking, we have, and comes in my space, where you have states that are issuing driver's licenses to illegals who haven't been trained to drive a 80,000-pound truck on an American road. We have a little girl that had her life impacted for the rest of her life, and she's 5 years old, and it was an illegal who hit her. I think the question becomes, why doesn't every Democrat stand up and go, no, we want well-qualified drivers on American roads? That's not partisan. We don't want illegals who can't speak the language, contrary to American law for decades, to not be on American roads. I think those are easy issues, Jake, and I don't think we saw Democrats stand up and support them. We got some applause for the U.S. Olympic hockey team, but that was probably one of the only bipartisan moments of the night, which I think is too bad. Again, if inflation's down, Democrats should applaud it. If real incomes are up, Democrats should applaud it. Those are good things that we should support as Americans. And just because Donald Trump's in office doesn't mean you have to sit on your hands. You should applaud that because that's good for America.
Secretary of Transportation Sean Duffy, thanks for coming on tonight. Really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Jake.
Coming up, what did Americans across the country think of President Trump's speech? Our CNN instant poll. Just minutes away. It's an instant poll. Plus, we're going to go to a swing district in battleground Michigan, where we're going to talk to voters about their reactions.
CNN's coverage of the State of the Union address is brought to you by Vidgard Hytrulo.
I like
like things personalized, like my coffee. So when my doctor prescribed Vyvgart Hytrulo self-injection for my generalized myasthenia gravis, we personalized my treatment goals. Vyvgart Hytrulo can improve daily abilities and reduce muscle weakness.
It's my treatment, my way.
Vyvgart Hytrulo for weekend away Steve.
Is travel ready and can go where I go.
Self-injection fits my plans. Do not use Vyvgart Hytrulo if you're allergic to its ingredients. It may increase infection risk and cause serious allergic or infusion or injection-related reactions. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, fever, recent or planned vaccinations, allergy history, or kidney problems. Most common side effects include respiratory and urinary tract infections, headache, and injection site reactions.
My Vyvgart Hytrulo self-injection.
Reducing my symptoms. That's treatment my way. Ask your neurologist about Vyvgart Hytrulo.
You moved in. You nested. You partied. You cuddled. Made egg rolls. Slept in. Or tried to. And you kept growing. Now it's time for the next chapter. With Open Door, get an all-cash offer for your home in 24 hours. Because saying goodbye should be the hardest part. Move into your future with Open Door. Taxes was chasing updates. Now Taxes is a TurboTax expert, doing it all for you. So you can chase this feeling. Now this is Taxes. Intuit TurboTax.
We know why you've put off your best smile. The time, the cost, the anxiety. That's why Aspen Dental is changing how dentistry is done, with technology to make care comfortable and flexible hours to fit your life. New patients without insurance get an exam and x-rays for just $29. Not waiting for tomorrow. That's the Aspen Dental difference. Aspen Dental. It's time to smile again.
This one goes better with the walls.
This is so much easier than the home improvement store.
There's the measurement fee, delivery fee, restocking fee.
And installation.
Oh, no, that's not my department.
With Empire's Home Floor Advantage, we have clear, all-inclusive pricing. No surprises. And installation is on your schedule.
Call or visit EmpireToday.com and get the Home Floor Advantage.
800-588-2300
Today.
If you know luxury, it's not just award-winning, it's rewarding. Sattva Mattresses supports all types of sleepers. Luxury is handcrafted and assembled in American factories and brought directly to you with our complimentary in-home delivery and setup service, which is why over 90% of customers would recommend Sattva to friends and family. Sattva, luxury mattresses made affordable.
Disaster. The Chernobyl meltdown. Sunday on CNN and next day on the CNN app. Standoff, the FBI, Power and Paranoia. Premieres Sunday, March 22nd on CNN.
If you agree with this statement, then stand up and show your support. First duty of the American government is to protect American citizens, not illegal aliens. You should be ashamed of yourself not standing up. You should be ashamed of yourself.
That was President Trump addressing the immigration crisis in America, a line that earned him one of his longest rounds of applauses of the night. I want to go to Saginaw County, Michigan. CNN senior political contributors Van Jones and Scott Jennings have been pounding beers and eating popcorn and watching the they're doing a special CNN voter live cast. Saginaw was one of two counties in that crucial swing state to flip from Biden to Trump. Michigan is home to several key midterm contests later this year. Tonight, Van and Scott are joined by 10 voters, 4 Democrats, 4 Republicans, and 2 independents who watched tonight's speech. Van and Scott, walk us through the reaction in the room to the president's address.
Well, half of us were miserable, and the other half were delighted. And we're going to get a chance to hear from everybody. Look, I think the most important thing I could say is that people here who are not in Washington, D.C., who are on the ground, look at this stuff very, very differently. You did not like this speech at all. Tell me why.
I didn't like the speech because he did not talk about what he was doing to make our lives better.
as Governor Spanberger said, is the president working to make our life economy?
But what about the Trump accounts? What about the tax cuts? Did that move you at all? Did that make you feel like he's on your side?
No, it did not.
Why not?
He talked about the healthcare plan. Where is his healthcare plan? People's health insurance premiums are going up. What is he doing for that? What is he doing for our seniors?
Yeah, just left you flat.
But Erica, you are a Trump supporter. You liked the speech, and you had some positive things to say. What'd you think?
Yep, I'm glad he addressed the tax breaks. I haven't done ours yet, but I know there will be a huge change with the children tax break, and my husband works a lot of overtime, so I'm excited to see what that does. I think no senior should pay Social Security taxes. And then I liked how I wish he would have stayed more on Iran, because I was already wondering and trying not to worry about it, but kind of not paying attention.
Diplomacy.
Right. But he will find out.
A focus on the economy and looking forward. And Supreme Court struck the tariffs down, and he's going for another round of tariffs. And I also think that's the wrong direction. Tariffs cost our company a lot of money. Our costs are up, and we need to control our costs. And, without, raising rates, we can't give raises to our employees. We can't help them. So I'm stuck in that
stuff at all. But you said that you enjoyed this speech and that there were moments that moved you. What moved you about this speech?
Well, the celebrating people is always good, but again, that 18 trillion investment, the 25 million in Trump accounts. But I did hear something on the health care, right? We have a law, the Obamacare, the ACA, and we don't have we don't have a way around it, and it's really just pooled care that's gone up every year. And this most favored nation, he's taken a stab at lowering the cost for us. And unless the legislature acts, he's at least doing something that's going to hit our pocketbook.
I think the part of the speech that's probably going to live on for most Republicans is when he asked the Congress, stand up if you think your duty is first to American citizens before illegal aliens. Republicans stood up. He gave him his most sustained applause for the night. I suspect, man, you're going to see this in a lot of campaign ads, that Democrats wouldn't stand up. What did you all think of the showmanship of that, or of sort of the spectacle of trying to get Democrats to stand up for that?
Well, I think the point, that and it may have gotten a little muddled, but in the showmanship, but I think his point is valid. Everybody in that room represents the citizens in this country. And are you doing your job? He should, the governor asked, is Trump doing his job? Trump asked, are all of you doing your job?
But don't you think it was just kind of a cheap stunt? To just, you're somebody who's been in politics for a long time. To me, it seemed like a stunt. No matter what Trump told Democrats, stand up if I say anything. If he said stand up if you like puppies, they would have said we like kittens. There's no way they were going to stand up. So to me, he was just trying to make Democrats look bad. But should they have stood up, Pastor?
The role should be to unify the country. I think this was the opportunity for us to come together as one. We're not a states of.
If you were a Democrat or against illegal immigrants, whatever he said, would you have stood up?
I would have respected our country, and I would have stood to my standards. I would have stayed to my who I know who I am. Left at that.
So,
he should be a politician. He's a better politician than me.
Wait a minute. All right. We have a minute left here. We're in Michigan. Yeah. We're in Michigan. We can see Canada from here, almost.
Kind of.
Did everybody love the hockey team?
Let's do it.
This unified America. We took their sport. We took their gold medal. Jack Hughes, our guy, he took their hot chicks. He's dating one of their hot chicks right now. It's amazing. I know. That's what I'm saying.
2 gold medals. The women won 2.
And the president acknowledged the women, and he said they're coming to the White House, which I thought was a great thing. So here in Michigan, Anderson, I have to say, I think the hockey moment was unifying, probably in this particular area more than anywhere else in the country. Everybody, Republicans, Democrats, even Van. Yeah. Even poor Van. On a miserable miserable night said the American hockey team is a great thing. Admit it. Good thing.
That was a good thing, though. I will say they keep messing with these Canadians and it's messing up y'all's economy. No tourists are coming down here, so let's be nice, be a little bit nicer to the Canadians. But I'm glad we won.
All right, Anderson.
It's nice.
That's what we got out here in Michigan. We got a lot of opinions out here.
It's nice to see the heated rivalry between you guys. You can watch it later, Scott. See it. My panel is here with me in Washington. I do want to play something that President Trump said about affordability, which is obviously something that the governor spoke about as well.
Use the word affordability, a word they just used it. Somebody gave it to them, knowing full well that they caused and created the increased prices that all of our citizens had to endure. You caused that problem. You caused that problem. They knew their statements were a dirty, rotten lie. Their policies created the high prices. Our policies are rapidly ending them. That I will soon be presenting Connor with our highest civilian honor, which we will be given and which has been given to many athletes over the years. But when I say many, not too many, like 12, it's called the highest civilian honor in our country, the Presidential Medal of Freedom.
It was the thought about the hockey.
What I thought was actually really interesting, just listening to those voters and Americans, they were really focused on the economy. And I think that the red meat applause lines that Scott mentioned about stand up if you believe that you're supposed to be working for U.S. citizens, that definitely works really well for the partisans. But the regular people, their takeaways were all about the economy. They were about healthcare. They were about tariffs. They were about the cost of living. They were about exactly what we've been talking about this whole time. And I think that is very instructive, because that moment where Trump got his biggest applause line in the room, I don't know if it will resonate as much as the White House might want it to be. And it certainly is not going to be the thing that this midterm is going to be.
I think one of the problems that he has is that people see these things as distractions. They don't think he's focused on the thing that is most important to them, the thing that was most important to them when they elected him. They don't think he's delivering on that. And even the things that his supporter mentioned there, there is not $18 trillion new investments here. Everybody knows the economy in their communities have slowed. They're worried about their jobs. This most favored nation piece on drugs applies to like 40 drugs of the 23,000 prescription drugs are out there. So people know they're not paying less for their prescriptions. And I think that is the challenge, because he is selling something that they don't feel or see, and they don't think he's really focused on it.
Well, let's unpack this. Okay, so his line, their policies created the high prices, our policies are rapidly ending them. That is going to be the line that they keep driving, which is they are responding and trying to bring down what Biden brought to them, which is pain. First Trump administration, unrivaled economic success that drove him back to the White House. That's the reason why he got elected this time. So the assumption here was that he would deliver bigly. And the American people are yet to feel that. And without feeling it, no visual, no audio will move them off that unless they can feel it. That's what the Republicans
The reason they had those expectations was because he set those expectations and said that he was going to deliver quickly, that he was going to bring down costs, and he did not do that.
We're going to get more voter reaction next in our CNN Instant Poll. Coming up, Pete Buttigieg joins us. We'll be back in a moment.
The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, Emmy winner for Outstanding Recorded News Program. This week, Omar Jimenez accomplished anything? The Whole Story with Anderson Cooper, Sunday at 8 on CNN, and next day on the CNN app.
to discuss senior care. Living alone is not easy, so I've come to terms with that. The expert advisors and free resources provided by Place for Mom make it easy to find senior care options right here in our community.
Our family started Cane Brew with a dream and a lot of hard work. Now we're thriving, growing. All the difference for our business. We're a case study for how AI is strengthening American manufacturing. Washington needs to help AI flourish. It's vital to our economic security. We cannot let China dominate these technologies. America must innovate and win. Let's protect our competitive edge.
This one goes better with the walls.
This is so much easier than the home improvement store.
There's the measurement fee, delivery fee, restocking fee.
And installation.
Oh, no. That's not my department.
With Empire's Home Floor Advantage, we have clear, all-inclusive pricing. No surprises. And installation is on your schedule.
Call or visit EmpireToday.com and get the home floor advantage.
800-588-2300 Today. Hi, Phil Swift here for Flex Seal. Liquid rubber in a can. It sprays out as a thick liquid.
Experiences you'll never forget with Chase Freedom Unlimited.
I miss when HR used to feel the squeeze of bad software. Then they got Bamboo HR, and now everybody's so stress-free.
When you need an HR platform that's easy and powerful, that's Bambooable. That's Bamboo HR. Your ED could be in your head, but for too long, outdated ED meds have been obsessed with your plumbing, giving no thought to the spark that starts in your brain way before anything even twitches. That's why we made an apomorphine to complement that.
Japanese-born players in front of their nation's fans for the first time.
Homecoming, the Tokyo series, premieres March 27th on the CNN app.
And welcome back to CNN's coverage of President Trump's State of the Union address. The president setting a record for the longest State of the Union speech, speaking for nearly 2 hours. President Trump touted how America is winning under his leadership.
People are asking me, please, 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 Mr. President, we're winning too much. We're not used to winning any. Until you came along, we're just always losing.
The president going on to list several new policies, which he says will tackle the affordability crisis, including pledging new retirement accounts and preserving Social Security. He also didn't shy away from swiping these Supreme Court justices who ruled against his signature tariff policy.
An unfortunate ruling from the United States Supreme Court. It just came down. Very unfortunate ruling. But the good news is that almost all countries and corporations want to keep the deal that they already made, right, Scott? Knowing that the legal power that I, as president, have to make a new deal could be far worse for them.
The president also laying out his case for military action against Iran.
My preference is to solve this problem through diplomacy. But one thing is certain, I will never allow the world's #1 sponsor of terror, which they are by far, to have a nuclear weapon. Can't let that happen.
It wasn't all policy tonight. The president using the opportunity to attack Democrats a number of times throughout the night.
These people are crazy. I'm telling you. They're crazy. You should be ashamed of yourself. They don't like to hear that. One of them, sick people. Sick people. Boy, oh boy. We're lucky we have a country. With people like this, Democrats are destroying our country.
Some of the moments from this evening, Jake.
All right, thank you so much. The first results from our CNN instant poll are in. So let's bring in CNN political director David Chalian. David, what did they say?
Yeah, well, I just want to take a moment here to explain. This is a poll of speech watchers. So it is not a poll that is reflective of the population overall. And what we know about people who tune in to State of the Union addresses, they tend to be fans of the president, whichever president is giving the speech. So the polling universe here is about 13 points per instant poll. Get this reaction from those that watched the speech tonight. 38% said they had a very positive reaction to the speech, 25% somewhat positive, 36% negative. So roughly 2/3 in the positive territory, 1/3 negative among speech watchers. How does that very positive number stack up against previous addresses? Well, look here. It's about 6 percentage points lower than Donald Trump was at with the very positive score last year. He was at 44% very positive reaction last year. This year, 38%, even though the universe of speech watchers was actually even a bit more Republican than it was last year. And we also took a look at that very positive speech reaction here compared to previous presidents in this midterm year. So in 2026, this year, tonight, 38% very positive reaction. Joe Biden 4 years ago, 41% very positive reaction. That was the year Democrats lost control of the House. You see Trump in 2018 was at 48% very positive when his party lost control of the House in his first term. So you see here, again, Donald Trump is at the bottom of this. I think these polls, even by fans of the president, people who tuned in to watch tonight, and he gets a 2/3 overall positive reaction, I still think you're seeing his overall trouble in the polls these days, which is that he's at a low point, even compared to a year ago when he gave his speech to a joint session.
Let's bring in Pete Buttigieg. He served as transportation secretary. Buttigieg, good to see you. So what's your reaction to the speech? What's your reaction to the results from our instant poll?
Well, I'm not surprised that those numbers seem to suggest that this is at least the weakest performance ever by President Trump in a State of the Union, because there's this big disconnect between the tone he's taking, everything's going along fine and we're just going to do more of it, and what people are actually feeling at home, where things are more expensive and the country feels like it is even more chaotic than it may have been before. And so remember, the central promise of his campaign, certainly the day one promise of his presidency, is I will make things more affordable for you. He's come in, he's done the opposite. And by the way, it's not only that he has tried and failed to cut prices or cut inflation. That would be bad enough. About $1,000 a household is what his tariffs cost the average American. His billionaire allies, the kinds of people who got most of his tax cuts, maybe that's not a lot of money, but of course to most Americans $1,000 is a lot of money. You notice that in your family budget, and you can't be tricked about that by the president spinning stories for a 2-hour-long speech.
So let's talk about a couple things having to do with affordability, since you're bringing that up, which is obviously a vulnerability for the president right now. One of them is that people who are using the argument of affordability right now, Democrats, are the same ones that supported the Biden policies that created the huge spike in inflation and created, in his view, the mess that we're in. How do you respond to that?
Yeah, if he was in his first few months, he might have been able to get away with that. But now that we're in the second year, and remember, Americans understand exactly what these tariffs did to them. That's why they're so unpopular. That's why the American people overwhelmingly disapprove of the president's handling of inflation and the economy. We know that he is making us pay a tax called a tariff on the things that we buy every day. And even though the Supreme Court held that many of the tariffs he implemented were illegal and struck them down, it's not clear that he certainly doesn't seem to have any intention of giving us our money back as Americans. And we know that some of those tariffs are still on the books, and we're still paying what will be at least hundreds of dollars per household right now. One of the many lies he told tonight was that other countries are paying it. Again, you can't trick Americans about that because we see that on our bills. So, of course, blame shifting is a very typical thing you're going to see from this White House, but we're against the lower health care premiums, given that we all saw the tax cuts for billionaires that this president passed in his first year. I think it's pretty hard to suggest that the thing really important about the tariffs, they didn't work. Right? So it's not just that we're paying more.
Time are going to be eliminated because of provisions from the bill that passed last year. He talked about the housing crisis and not banning Wall Street companies from buying up houses to rent to prevent people from being able to buy them. He talked about a measure, Trump RX, which would lower the cost of prescription drugs. I mean, he is acknowledging, in a way, even if he's saying that things are great, he is acknowledging that there's a lot more that can be done.
Yeah, but in every case, it's window dressing, right? The Trump RX thing, which is largely taking credit for kind of an existing coupon program, as I understand it, doesn't really balance out the fact that the Republicans are making so many Americans pay more on their health care premiums. The tax on tips thing, which I think is great to have that be tax-free, but it doesn't really outweigh the fact that so many Americans are facing the cost of the major tax cuts for billionaires. That was, of course, that and the corporate tax cuts. That's the main focus of his tax policy. The housing piece, I am also skeptical of these firms going in and buying houses. But for the other 99% of houses that aren't owned by those kinds of firms, we got to hear more of a clear plan. And one of the things that's making it hard to afford a mortgage right now is interest rates. Interest rates are pushed up by the enormous deficits created by the Trump tax cuts for the wealthiest and the corporations. So in every case, he's offering a little droplet of something. Some things I might even agree with, but that little droplet goes into a bucket of things he has done to actively make the problem worse. And I think folks sitting at home, my neighbors in Michigan, folks I meet in my travels, see it. I was just met a brewer in New Hampshire who was walking me through just how much more a beer costs now, a can of beer that they produce because of the tariffs. And whether we're talking about a can of beer, whether we're talking about automotive equipment coming in, we see it left and right. We're feeling it, and everybody knows, or at least the vast majority of Americans get, that we are paying more specifically because of Donald Trump's policies.
A brewer in New Hampshire, you said?
Yeah, there's a good example of how this isn't just something going into industrial goods, like a can of beer.
Yeah.
And this is a small business kind of place that a lot of people gather at and count on. As
I get it.
Look, I can't eat all of those costs. Some of those got to go to our consumers.
No, I didn't know. I went to college in New Hampshire. I just didn't know if you know that's actually where they have the first in the nation primary. But just what I just did on the top of my head. Secretary Buttigieg, good to see you. Thank you so much.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
Anderson.
Okay, thanks very much. Back now with the panel. I want to put up the Insta poll that David Chalian talked about. Very positive reaction to president's speeches over the years. John King, I mean, it's interesting. President Trump 2018, 48% positive speech to this one, 38%.
So I said immediately after the speech, I thought one of his challenges that he might have helped himself with tonight was his decline in polls among Republicans recently. He's way down among independents. He's down among Latinos. He's down among just about every voting group in the country, but including Republicans, which is critical heading into a base election year. Just if Republicans preserve the House, which I think is almost impossible at this point, their House majority, but keep the Senate, win governor's race. This is from my travels over the last several years, including just in the last couple of months where I've spent a lot of time with Trump voters. Donald Trump has been the dominant figure in our politics for 11 years now, since he came down that escalator. I do think that even among some of his own supporters, there's some Trump exhaustion or Trump fatigue setting in. That we've just Trump exhaustion. Yes, it's you find that more among Democrats. But I have found so many people from Bernie Sanders supporters to the Trumpiest of Trump supporters saying they're just not watching as much television, not engaging as much on social media in the second term because they remember what it did to their blood pressure in the first term. And so they're putting their mental health away from the political debates. And I don't think it's unusual. You see this. We were having a conversation earlier about, out in Iowa, a state that's been Republican a long time. Democrats think they have a shot in the governor's race this year. Is that just because of Trump's numbers? No, it's because you've had Republican leadership for a long time. I'm from Massachusetts. Everyone says that's a blue state. Massachusetts every now and then elects a Republican governor. It's a way of saying to the Democrats, go think about this for a while. We're done with you for a little bit.
There's another reason why Iowa is in contention, which is it's the state that's been hit harder by tariffs than any other state. And the fact that the president announces tonight his continued determination, good news, we're going to keep these tariffs in place, we're going to use other devices and so on. You heard the group in Michigan. I don't think that's going to land very well.
But I think part of that is, look, You do not win the presidency without being an excellent politician, whatever your party is, whatever your name is. You don't win the presidency without being a fantastic performer. And Donald Trump is a fantastic performer. But I think if you just think about this, since he plays to the camera all the time, since he's very good at the entertainment part of politics and everything, that it is not out of the realm to think that I've watched this show long enough. That enough people are out there just saying, I've just seen this a lot. It's the same. It's the,
let's get back to it.
What he does is the same every time.
If inflation is low and wages are rising, the president's popular. Period. End of statement. That is Bill Clinton's success in the 90s, was riding this wide wave of economic growth and prosperity. When you have prosperity, you have popularity among the governing class. So here is the question, which is, can the president land a trade deal with China? That is the next big set piece of our politics globally, but especially here domestically in the United States.
If he did that tomorrow, what would it show in the pocketbook of working class Americans? So in 8 months, that's the president's problem. Even if he puts
that is the question,
even
not
if he
the
puts
problem.
it in place now, can you change the dynamic by November?
Happy with this president? Did he say or do anything tonight that would change your opinion of him? I think the answer is probably no. He was true to form in all of the ways that if you love him, you love him. If you hate him, you hate him. I don't think he changed people's view of him, and that's what the poll of viewers shows us, is that he is unpopular. About 36%, 34% in some polls. The percentage of people who thought that they were very happy with what they heard tonight was about 38%. That tracks. I don't think that the president is changing people's minds about him, about what they think the trajectory of the country is. And I think you're right. Generally speaking, if inflation is going down, wages are going up, that should mean he's a popular president. But he's not a popular president. And part of that is because the measure of inflation is not from 9%, where it was at its worst from Biden, to now. It's where it was when he started to now, which is that it's only down a couple of ticks. And that's what America, even if you want to play around with the statistics, you can't make people feel like the last 3 years didn't happen to them.
Coming up, do voters think President Trump is moving the country in the right direction? Tabby's point. We're going to have more from our CNN incident.
The relationship between the FBI director and the president has always been complicated. No one is above the law in the FBI's eyes.
Standoff of the FBI, Power and Paranoia, premieres Sunday, March 22nd on CNN.
So dry. Leggings it is.
Try Olay Hydrating Body Wash. It's the secret to lasting moisture. With 10 times the moisturizers to repair your skin barrier. Go from dry to visibly hydrated.
Love the skin you're in.
Olay Hydrating Body Wash and Lotion.
disaster. The Chernobyl meltdown. Sunday on CNN and next day on the CNN app.
We're just minutes away from new data. New data from what? From our CNN incident poll. But first, how did President Trump's statements about the economy stack up compared to reality? CNN's Daniel Dale is here with the fact check. Daniel.
Jake, there was just a lot of lying